creative financing because we do play by different rules. You'll often hear me say things like, hey, I can buy a house at 100% of value and still make money off of it. And I don't want that to give the impression that that means, hey, every house at 100% is going to make you money. That's not true, but you do have to look at things a little bit differently than you would have when you were able to just buy at 70 cents minus repairs or something like that. So I think the most effective methodology for going about doing that is something that is called backing into the deal. And essentially what that means is that we are going to start at the end and work our way back, right? It's really no different than what you're used to doing when you're running a 70 cents minus repair, 75 cents minus repair. It's really no different from that. But what it does is it unpacks a little bit more in the way of, when I'm running an analysis by 75 cents and minus repairs, what does that really do? What are the steps behind that? What does that mean, right? So by unpacking this, you're going to have better deals that are more likely to make you money in the long run, and know with confidence when you're moving inside of that deal, yeah, this is a deal that makes sense for me to do right now, right here. This is the offer I can make to my seller. This is how much on a monthly cash flow I should be able to expect. And this is how much from that cash flow I can offer for an owner finance deal. All of that stuff is wrapped up today inside of backing into the deal. But before we get going into that, I do want to reintroduce to you guys that next week is our Mastermind. The Mastermind is the huge, big event where all of the most valuable players get together. I say most valuable players. Everybody is there, right? Everybody's the MVP. Everybody gets together, and it's just a phenomenal weekend of learning. If you haven't been a part of a Mastermind, I really, 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 really encourage you to consider being a part of a Mastermind. My partner and I spend $50,000 a year on Masterminds because every time I go to a Mastermind, I learn some kind of trick or tip that's going to take me to that next level and make me six figures or whatever that might be. So my wonderful, fantastic assistant, Miss Ika, has made us she was like, I couldn't sleep last night. I made a little thing and I want to show it to you because it is a nice little introduction to what is our Q4 2020 Mastermind going to be all about. There you have it. Yay to Miss Ika. Good job. Woo! No, it's going to be really good. We're going to be talking lead gen. We're going to be talking private capital raise. And I cannot tell you how excited I am. Miss Christina Kraus is going to be coming in and giving us a full-blown discussion of how to run your marketing well and how to get your cost per lead, cost per closing down to what are the numbers that you should be looking at, which are surprisingly different than the numbers that most people look like. So, or look at, I should say. So, definitely, if you are interested in stepping up your game, getting part of a community of people who are really doing creative financing on a daily basis, taking it seriously, learning the ins and outs of it, and taking action, not just, sitting there in analysis paralysis, please go to CreativeCashFlow.com/memberships. Check it out. Hit the apply button. Get in soon because we're starting next week. It's going to be an awesome time. All right, so all that to say, let us dive right into backing into the deal. So backing into the deal, like I said, we start at the end and we work our way back. That's the nomenclature, right? There are two different ways of running a similar analysis as backing into the deal. One is backing into the deal. The other one I call knowns and unknowns. If you are a member of the Creative Cashflow Academy or you're in the Propelio Academy, I do have videos on both, right? The backing into the deal and knowns and unknowns. It is common that knowns and unknowns makes more sense to somebody who backing into the deal might not necessarily make the sense to, or vice versa. But I think that backing into the deal is the most accurate way to figure out how you're going to make a good owner financed offer to your seller in such a way that makes sure that you're going to make money on that deal. So let's look at what we mean by that. When you are backing into the deal, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look for, what does this property sell for? Okay. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about ARV. I'm talking about your after repair value, which is, again, the same thing you would be looking at for the like a 70 cents, minus repairs. If you're going to do 70 cents minus repairs, 75 cents minus repairs, what you're doing is you're looking at what is 75% of the after repair value, and then you're backing out your repairs from that number, and what you're left with is your offer price. Now, in a creative financing situation, you also have to figure out what kind of monthly payments you can make to this person. Not just what can you buy it for with the contract price, but what can you pay on a monthly basis that makes this deal make sense. And that's what the added complication is, that you've got to have a different methodology for looking into. So when we are going to do that, what I want to point out to you and be very clear about is that our world in creative financing sits squarely between two worlds. You have the retail world that you're used to running, right? You've got the world of, hey, I've got to find what my ARV is going to be because that's what I'm going to list it on the retail market for. And then you've got your rental world, okay? The reason why we need to know both of these numbers is that your life is going to fit squarely in between those two. Because you need to know what you can sell the house for as a contract price, but you also need to know what that house is going to demand on a monthly basis. At the end of the day, what does an ARV tell us? When we're looking at ARVs, what is that actually telling us? Right? What it's telling us is that through the market, we have found that this is how much money somebody is willing to spend on a house to live in a house like that in that kind of neighborhood. That's what a comp is. When you're comping properties, that's what you're finding out. Your ARV is saying if people were willing to spend more, they would have. If people were not willing to spend this much, they wouldn't have. So this is what somebody's willing to spend as a contract price on a property to live in a neighborhood like that, to live in a house like that. Well, similarly, what does the rental comp tell you? Well, the rental comp tells you this is what somebody is willing to pay on a monthly basis to live in that kind of house in that kind of neighborhood. So we're getting a comp on both sides. Now, in our world with creative financing, what I'm doing is I'm looking at a way to acquire with creative financing. I'm also looking at a way of selling with creative financing. I want to sell with owner financing. That's my preferred method. Now, I might also rent. You might flip, you might wholesale, you might hotel, whatever that is. But in today's context, because we've got a shortened amount of time in a single lesson in a single day, I'm going to be going off of the basis of, hey, we're going to acquire with creative financing and we're going to sell with creative financing, either sub 2 or free and clear or some combination of the both with private money maybe included. But at the end of the day, we're going to find somebody who wants to live in this property, who is not going to get a loan from a bank, but instead is going to give you a down payment and pay you every month a monthly payment. That monthly payment is going to be equal to what the house would rent for, just like the contract price that they're buying it from you is going to be equal to the retail comp. So this is why I come in here and I say, look, we are right in between these two worlds, because what we're finding out is what would it rent for? Let's say it's going to rent for $1,000 a month. Actually, I'm going to make it $1,200 a month. I don't know why, but that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say $1,200 a month. And we're going to give us the nice 1% rule, meaning that the house is going to sell for, that wouldn't be 1%. It's going to rent for 1% of what it sells for. So that would mean that it's going to have a retail comp of $120,000. What this tells me is that I'm going to sell it to my buyer for $120,000, and I'm going to say, hey, buyer, your PITI payment, your payment including taxes and insurance and everything, is going to be about right at $1,200. Now, oftentimes people will bring up selling these houses with owner financing at a larger value, at a premium, on top of what it might comp for. And that's okay. Particularly from a legal stance, there's nothing that says that you can't sell a house for what you want to sell it for, right? Nothing says that you can't charge a premium on a property. However, if you start looking at some of the bigger picture items, selling the note in the future, the ability to refinance, where the market cycle is, all those kinds of things, it may not be the smartest thing to do to pump that up. My kind of internal stance is typically, I don't want to sell a house. If you're going to sell it for a premium, I'm going to recommend that you never sell it for a premium of more than 10% over what it would actually get an appraisal at? The reason why is that, let's say it's a $100,000 house. It would appraise for $100,000. If you sell it for $110,000 and you take a 10% down payment, you will have a buyer that is in that property for $99,000, right? They are not underwater. This is very similar to somebody going and get a VA loan that has a 0% down. They're not underwater. They get in. Nobody has a problem with VA loans, right? What I do have somewhat of an issue with is selling that $100,000 appraised house at $150,000, because now that person is kind of messed up, right? Like if they've got a 10% down payment to you, they get a loan for $135,000. They can't refinance that thing. They're not going to be able to sell it. They're underwater from day one. I don't want to put somebody in that situation. I'm just understanding that there is the ability, especially from a legal standpoint, to sell at a premium. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about selling it for what it would appraise for and giving the PITI payment equivalent to the rent. All right. So now let's back in. Now that is step one. If we look at our steps of backing into the deal, step one is going to be what dollars in exist. Oops. And I worded this in kind of a clunky way, but in a very intentionally clunky way. The reason why is I need for everybody to start thinking about your deal analysis as dollars in versus dollars out. This is surprisingly enough a very difficult concept for most people to get in the habit of using. So if this is difficult for you, that's cool. Don't worry about it. Just work on it. You want to be in a position where when you look at a deal, the thing that matters is how much money is going to enter my bank account and how much money is going to leave my bank account. That's the thing that makes a deal a deal. Right? People get really wrapped up in, I got to use this rule of thumb, or I got to use this. One time I learned this guy that said the blah, 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 blah. All of that boils down to, are you going to have more money into your bank account than leaves your bank account? Because if so, you've got a deal. So if you can give yourself that baseline understanding when stepping into a deal analysis, then you will have a much better chance of actually being successful on that deal analysis and not getting wrapped up in all these different perspectives and ways to look at the deal. We want to look at dollars in versus dollars out. What I try to do is I try to get in a good habit of when we're talking about a dollar in item, I'm going to write it in green. When we're talking about a dollar out item, I'm going to write it in red. So the first step of backing into the deal is what money comes in. What are my dollars in? What dollars in exist on this deal, which we just solved with $120 as a sales price, $1,200 as rental. That's step one. Okay. Now, when selling with owner financing, I'm going to implore you to never accept less than 10% down. People ask about our buyers and the consistency and payments from our buyers. And we have really good pay histories with our buyers historically. And I'll tell you, down the line, the thing that determines whether or not your buyer is going to pay you, more so than anything else, is did they put a 10% down payment? So we want that 10% down payment. All right. And I'm going to factor that in here in just a second. But the step two is subtract the dollars out. Okay? When you subtract the dollars out from the dollars in, what you're left with is what I call play money. Okay? So at that point in time, I'm going to put this in blue because it's kind of neutral. Your last step is to distribute your play money. Oops, that's not how you spell play. So let's put some numbers to it. Let's put this into play, right? That's backing into the deal in its simplest form. What's my dollars in? What's my dollars out? What I'm left over with can either be my profit or be the money that I use to pay the seller. So let me give you a couple examples of that, okay? So we're going to run some real numbers, all right? Let's say that we've got a house whose ARV is $100,000. Let's say that it would rent for $1,000. Now, this right here already is a step that a lot of people don't take. I can't tell you how many times I get presented with like a JV situation or something like that where somebody wants to do a deal and they know the ARV, they know all these other numbers, but they don't know what it rents for. And like I said earlier, your rental comps are arguably more important than your retail comps and owner financing. You've got to know both, right? So if you're going to be in the creative world, you've got to know both retail and rental because we live squarely in between those. So that may be lesson number one to a bunch of people is like, oh man, I'm not getting my rent comps prioritized as much as I am my ARV. That's going to set you up for failure. So we got to know both. All right. In this case, we got a house that's $100,000 with a $1,000 rent on it. That's in green because that's money potentially in. Now, what are we looking at in our constants when we subtract the dollar out? Number two, we're going to subtract money out. Well, let's say that we've got an underlying lien. In other words, there is money due to a bank, okay? And this underlying lien is, I don't know, let's say $50,000 at 3.5%. It has 22 years left on it. And so let's find the payment. So our payment at that point in time is $50,000. Whoa, if it would accept my input of a finger. $50,000. Hello. There we go. At 3.5% for 22 years. Now, if you don't know how to use this calculator, I did a lesson on the calculator here a few weeks ago. You can do a search on the channel for the 10B2. It's 10BII. Is the calculator that we use. So we're going to solve for that. That would mean that the payment going to this bank is $271.84. I'm going to say $270 for the sake of keeping things simple and rounded. So we're going to say $270 a month goes to the bank. Okay. So now we're sitting in a situation where you have a seller who has told you, I would love to sell you my house. Subject to is on the table. It is possible. I'm okay with selling you this house sub 2. I owe this bank, we'll call them Wells, $50,000 for the next 22 years, and I pay them $270 a month. So now your job is to figure out what will they sell it to you for, and they're like, okay, well, I'll sell it to you if you give me $80,000. Let's say $85,000, okay? So we're going to pretend, for the sake of argument, to keep this as simple as possible and get the concept across, we're going to pretend that there's no repairs on this property so that you can just see how to back into the deal. Repairs would be included as money out, but for now, I just want to get the concept out, right? So they want $85,000, which the reason I'm choosing that number is that you should not buy a house for 85% of its value. If you're going to buy a house with cash, you need to be at 70, 75 cents. There are occasional times where you might buy at 80, maybe push an 82, but 85 is almost always going to be too much to buy a house for. But this is why we're in the creative situation. Now you're like, well, shoot, I am well past my 70-cent rule. I have to do creative financing on this, but fortunately for me, look, we got the underlying lien is on the table. We can sub to that. How do I figure this out? So now we start using these numbers that we've achieved to figure out what we're going to do. Now, a big part of making an offer like this, where you are offering somebody more than they owe, with sub 2 being included, just like we're doing here, right? We're going to make them this offer. I will show you how this deal can make sense at $85,000. We're going to sub 2 that 50. But the first inclination of a lot of people is to say, well, okay, so we will buy the house for $85,000 and we'll give them 4% interest on that money and blah, 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 or 4.5% or whatever that might be. And the problem there is if you do one lien to your seller, you buy with a wraparound mortgage, you're giving up too much money. I've done episodes on this as well. If you're a member at CreativeCashFlow.com, make sure that you watch the first 5 videos in the academy there. Really go through this of why you don't buy with a wraparound and why you don't sell with sub 2, right? This is one of those reasons. So I'll just instruct you and direct you to go to those other ones to learn more on that principle. But what we do know from this is that when we're going to buy that house, what we see here is that the house is worth $100,000. The seller owes 50 to the bank. UL stands for underlying lien. And they will not sell for less than $85,000. So what we're going to do, oops, I'm sorry, I'm not showing you. I'm going to redraw that. Well, I don't know, whatever. It shows here. So what we're saying here is we've got a ARV of $100,000. The seller owes 50, but they will not sell for less than $85,000. So what do we do to get them that difference? We don't buy it for $85,000. What we're going to do is we're going to give them a second lien for $35,000. Okay, that's how we're going to structure this, right? Now, I teach that structuring in other episodes and inside of the Academy. So again, I'm not going to go too deep down that road. What I'm doing is showing you the principle of backing into the deal, but I'm just setting some baseline understandings here, right? So that's how we're going to go about doing this. So now we start using these numbers that we have in front of us to find our play money, right? So again, what's our formula? It's money in minus money out equals play money, which I'm going to put as blue because it's kind of neutral. So what's our money in here? We've got a couple of different situations. So we're going to sell this house for $100,000. We're going to sell it. I'll keep it on this page. We're going to sell it for $100,000. We're going to get a $10,000 down payment. Okay. We're going to be left with a $90,000 wrap note. That's what our sale looks like. That's the first thing I got to figure out. We're starting from the end. That's my sale. $100,000 sale, 10% down, left with a note to our buyer at $90,000. Now, that $90,000 note, the terms of that note are going to be dictated by what it would rent for. So what does it rent for? It rents for $1,000 a month, right? So what is a rent payment, so if it rents for $1,000 a month, rent is going to equal PITI. From this, what does PITI stand for? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. From this, we've got to solve the part that we don't know. You see what we're doing here? Like we're solving mysteries. We're knocking out one by one. What do I actually know? What's the next thing I need to know? And how do I find that? So like right now, we know the rent rate. We know that we want our PITI payment to add up to the rent rate. Okay. But we don't know what our terms are on our loan to get to that PITI number. So we don't know the principal and interest yet. But we do know the taxes and insurance because we can go find the taxes online. We can run our insurance calculations. And by the way, our freebie that you will see linked in the description below has a deal analysis whetstone. It's going to make all of this stuff super easy for you. I call it a whetstone because it's made to help sharpen your skills. So click on that link, go there. You can download the deal analysis whetstone. It outlines all the things that you're going to need to know. And it even gives you formulas for things like that. Like the insurance, I'm like, yeah, we can just run a formula for the insurance. It's on the whetstone for you to be able to repeatedly go after. So the whetstone is designed for you to practice and to use on game day while you are talking to somebody on the phone or whatever that might be to help you analyze this stuff. So go ahead and download that at some point in time so that you've got this information in front of you to help you with things like that. But I'm gonna feed you some numbers for now, right? So we're gonna say that taxes and insurance for now add up to, I don't know, $250. I'm just gonna come up with a number, right? So that would mean that each month the taxes are $125. Each month the insurance is $125, something like that. So now what we know is if rent is $1,000 a month, and rent equals $250 plus something, PITI, what we need to find is this number right here, the PI, right? Well, that's fairly simple. If PI plus TI equals 1,000, then 1,000 minus TI equals PI. That's some basic math right there. So that leads me to know that we have $750 left over as PI in this case. See where I went with that? So now, see, this is why the rent rate is so important. So now I know what the PI is. So again, when we're trying to find everything about our end, I just found something else about our end. We're going to sell it for $100. We're going to get $10,000 up front. We're going to have a $90,000 note. We're going to take that note and that $90,000, I'm going to shoot for a 30-year. I always do 30 years with my buyers. So I'm going to do 30-year with my buyers. So that's another thing that I know. Now I know that I need the payment to be $750 a month for it to fit within the 1,000. What I don't know is the interest. So we're going to go over to our calculator here, right? So looking at the buttons that we have, so N is number of payments. I know I want this to be a 30-year mortgage, so I'm going to do 30. I don't yet know interest. I don't yet know interest. What I do know is the principal value. Our note to our buyer is going to be $90,000. What I do know is the payment. The payment needs to be $750. So that's the beauty of this calculator is now I've fed it 3 of the pieces of information that were very simple for us to find, and we get to solve for the last one. It's going to be about 9.2, something like that. 9.4. Okay. That was fairly close. But there you go. We've now not just, we're ultimately backing into the deal to see what we can offer, but we've just backed into what our interest rate is. We found the sales price, backed out the down payment, got the note, found the rent rates, backed out the taxes and insurance, got the PI, worked it all in, found our interest rate. Pretty interesting, right? Interesting. Y'all are leaving me hanging here. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So we've got 100, 10 down. We've got a wrap note at $90,000, which we now know is going to be at 9.4% for 30 years and equal $750 a month. Great. That's the monthly income that we will now have coming in. Rents for $1,000, back out the tax and insurance. The PI coming in is $750. We don't make money on taxes and insurance. Tax and insurance is a pass-through, right? Whoever owns the property is the person who pays for taxes and insurance. So our buyer owns the property, they're going to pay for taxes and insurance. We're just passing that through. We're just making that end payment fair enough for them, right? By making it $1,000. So now we know what the money that's actually going to come into us is. It's that $750. This is why I prefer owner financing over rentals, for instance, because in a rental, yeah, you're going to still have to back out the taxes and insurance from the rent rate, which, by the way, your insurance is going to be higher and your taxes are going to be higher because they are non-owner occupied, whereas this person's insurance and taxes are going to be lower because it's going to be a homesteaded property. So you actually get to capture more of that rent rate by financing it to them than you would if you were actually renting it to them. And this $750 that's coming in is truly a net profit. It's not a gross number, right? That $750 coming in is real money. I don't have to put it aside for capital expenditures. In other words, I don't have to put it aside for the boyfriend and girlfriend getting in a fight and slamming a door and breaking it. Now you got to fix the door, right? Like that. We don't have to put that $750 is real money. So now we've got our end. We know we're getting $10,000 in cash up front. We know we're getting $750 a month. Pretty sweet, right? So, and we got a $90,000 note. But this is our starting position. We've got 10 grand of cash to play with, and we've got $750 a month. So now that we've started at the very end, we've only looked at what the buyer is going to be giving to us. Now we've got to kind of assess, well, hold on, what else do we know about this situation? Well, another thing that we know about this situation is that there's an underlying lien involved. We know we got to buy it for 85 grand, and we know that we're going to be subtoing an underlying lien of 50. That's at 3.5% for 22 more years. It's $270 a month. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, I know that my seller wants $85,000 from me, which means that I'm going to subto this 50 and give them 35 grand, but I don't know how I can give them 35 grand and it still make sense for me. So now we get to calculate all of that in. We now know that we're getting 10 grand cash up front from the down payment. We now know that we're getting $750 a month. My preference would be to be able to maintain holding on to that cash. I don't want to give up that cash if I don't have to. Cash is important. So what if we give this person a second lien for that $35,000? We need to figure out what payments, I'm going to say second to seller, just to kind of clarify on this, and money in. We know we got to give them a second, but we don't know what the payment's going to be. Oops. Right? Because we haven't figured that out yet. We don't know what we can pay them, but we do know that inside of this too, there's an underlying lien at 50 grand for 22 more years, and it had, what was it, 200 and something in payments? $270. So if I'm looking at how much of a payment can I give my seller, we know my seller wants $35,000. How can I get them that $35,000? What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my $750 that's coming in. I'm going to back out the $270 that I know I have to pay. And what we're going to be left with, $750 minus $270, is $480 a month. Now, if you were able to just straight sub-to this property, that would be your profit. That would be your cash flow. But we're not straight sub-toing it. What we're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to sub-to this 50, and I'm going to go in and give them a $35,000 second lien. I just need to know how much I can pay them on a monthly basis. So now that I know that $480 a month is what I have to play with because all my constants are taken care of, right? It's not a variable what it rents for. What it rents for is what it rents for. It's not a variable what the bank is going to expect on a monthly basis. What's a variable is how much of what's left over is going to go to them and how much is going to go to you. So now what you have to decide is from that play money, how much of that do you need to keep? Do you want to keep for cash flow? Right? That's going to be important for you to figure out. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with somewhat of a baseline. Like, look, I want to, at a minimum, I would like to maintain keeping a minimum of $150 a month in cash flow on any property that I do. Therefore, I'm going to be left with $330 for the seller second. You see what I did there? I'm just picking a number. I'm saying, can I make this work if I give this seller $330 a month to hit their $35,000? So I'm going to plug that into the calculator here. I'm going to say, look, I need to give this person $35,000. I have $330 a month to play with to do that. And I don't know what interest rate I'm going to offer them, and I don't know how long it's going to be for. So what I like to do is I like to start off with 0% interest just to see how long that would take. It would take 106 months. Sweet. So we know we're in the realm of possibility. Because if I put in 0 and it was going to take, either it would say, what does it say? I can't remember. Let's say $12. Let me cause that error to happen. Oh, you know what? Hold on. There we go. It's no solution. I couldn't remember. It'll either say no solution, or it'll give you a number, or maybe the solution it gives you is like 50 years, right? Like the number I got just before this, like 2,000 something payments. Like they're not going to accept 2,000 something payments. But right now, by doing 330, if I put in 0, it's telling me we could get that paid in 106 months. Divide that by 12, we're looking at, divide that by 12, we're looking at almost 9 years. Now, what I like to do, I like to start off at like 4.5%. And I'll show you why in our negotiation series. If you are a member at the Academy, CreativeCashFlow.com/memberships, if you haven't looked into it before, but in there I've got a negotiation series. The hairy arm principle is going to be why I'm using this. Again, that's a topic for another day, but I'm going to start at 4.5 typically. And boom, there we go, 135 payments. That means that in 11.5 years, if you give them $0 up front, you could have that $35,000 second paid off, and you would have made $10,000 up front and $150 a month for the first 11 years. Right? So that actually works. So what we'd be looking at here, if we did that realm, or we went down that road, is this is what your deal would look like. You would have $10,000 come up front. I'll put up front. You would have $150 a month for the first 11 years. Then, after that 11 years is up, you've paid their $35,000 off, so you don't have to make that payment anymore. That payment of $330 now goes back into your pocket. So then, after that first 11 years is up, you're going to start making $480 a month. For the next 11 years. Why do I say that? Because the reason that we had $480 of play money is because we were factoring in this underlying lien that had to get paid off. Well, that underlying lien was up in 22 years. So the first 11 years, you're paying the underlying lien and the seller. But boom, now the seller's paid off. So then you're just paying the underlying lien, but you only have 11 more years left of that. So you're going to get $100 or $480 worth of cash flow for the next 11 years. Well, after that's done, guess what? That money that was going to the underlying lien is now going to you. So then for the next 8 years, you're getting $750 a month. Now, a lot of times people are like, yeah, but Grant, that's if it goes to 30. Yeah, that's true, if it goes to 30. And not all of them do, but a large portion of owner finance properties do get held to maturity, which is crazy, right? So just understanding that as being true is crazy, but also understanding that you've got somewhat of an idea that you could count on this income coming in for 30 years is awesome. So what we did there is we started at the end. We looked at what it would sell for. We backed out what we knew was going to happen. We knew we were going to have to pay taxes and insurance. We knew that we were going to have to pay an underlying lien, okay? And what we were left with on that cash flow base was what we could use as an offer to our seller. That's complete play money. Now, what if we had put in the 330 and it didn't work? It came up with no solution. Well, maybe you put in to where you're going to make less cash flow, right? I said that in here, I said, you know, when we were looking at our play money, well, what if we just count for $150 a month? Well, that got him paid off, got your seller paid off in 11 years. Well, what if it didn't get your seller paid off? What if you were just like, okay, well, crap, I have to give them the full 480, but that's going to pay them off in 5 years, and I'm okay with it because I got a bunch of equity, which in this case you wouldn't. That might be a reason. The other thing that might happen is like you look at it and you're like, oh, dude, I could get them paid off in 11 years if I only kept $150 worth of cash flow. But this person told me that they're cool with getting paid for 30 years. So maybe I can make $300 worth of cash flow and just pay them, you know, $180 a month, right? That's why this is called play money. It's because that 480 is completely, you get to choose how much goes in which direction. And that's the power behind this. But too few people know how to find that play money amount. Too few people know, hey, we're going to start with what it could sell for and what it could rent for. We're going to back out all the things we know we're going to have to pay. And then what we're left over with is what I'm allowed to offer my seller, right? John says, sell me a t-shirt. John, so actually I will give props. So I actually did not know, apparently this is like album art for somebody. But I got a whole bunch of t-shirts from Redbubble. So I'm going to give them a shout out. They should sponsor this episode, redbubble.com. It's really cool because it's just a place for artists to like put their art up, and then Redbubble will put that art on a t-shirt. So you can like find artists that you like, and you can support local art and that kind of stuff. I got like, you know, I bought like freaking $1,000 worth of t-shirts just to, you know, because it's like you're getting a shirt that nobody else is going to have, and you're supporting an artist in their art. Like find something that you like. It was a cool way to go about doing that. So if you guys are watching, redbubble.com, that's where I went. And Redbubble, I'll take a free shirt for that. Shout out. But yeah, or I'll sell you this one on terms for your play money amount every month. So yeah, again, going back to the point here, we do want to find your play money. That is what you're allowed to make offers on and keep as your deal. And you just have to find the formula that makes sense for you, right? Now this deal, if we were just run this through, what would this be? 150 times, well, what's 11 years, first of all? 11 times 12 months. So 132 times 150. So in this period right here, you're making $19,800 in this example. 480 times 132. Then you're making $63,000, almost 64. I'm going to bump this up to 20 to make my math easier in a minute. And then for 8 years, you're going to make $750 in cash flow, $72,000. So what is that? 72, 64, 20. 72 plus 64 plus 20 plus 10 from your down payment. This deal right here that you bought at 85% of value. Oh, you can't see the bottom of that screen. This deal right here that you bought for 80% or 85% of the value, you just made $166,000 on. That's good. That's a good amount of money. You should be happy with that, right? Because if you were going to try and wholesale or flip that, you're not making $166,000. Now, I get it. Time value of money, right? Took 30 years. I get it. That's fine. But factor in your time value of money. You're still getting a killer deal, right? If time value of money is going to knock off half of that, you're still making $80-something thousand on this, versus nothing on a trash deal, which is such a killer way to look at things. So I hope that you guys are able to put this into play. Again, I do have another video in the Academy specifically on backing into the deal that you guys can watch. I see a question from Teresa. Do you use the county appraisal for the ARV when Zillow is less? Neither of them. Those are both terrible places to get ARVs because Zillow can give you like an idea of it, but especially if you're going to be in a national landscape, some states allow Zillow to have full information. Others do not. Like, for instance, Texas is a non-disclosure state. So the Zestimate, the Trulia stuff, I don't even know if Trulia still exists, but none of those things are real. They are algorithms. What you need to do is you need to look for actual comps into MLS comps, right? So county appraisal is almost always going to be super low. Zillow is almost always going to be wrong, but it'll give you a rough idea. You got to get into MLS. You got to get into MLS and look at that, which Propelio offers MLS comps, true MLS comps, which is great because previously it was only realtors that could get into there. There's a couple different services that you get in there, but I really like the UX of Propelio. That's the only reliable place to get real pricing. And then the other thing that you can do is get a BPO or an appraisal to help, like if you are someplace, in another state or something like that. And Teresa is one of our Mastermind members. And so, I'll give you a connection, Teresa, or you can, ask anybody in the group for their connection. If you need connection for the BPOs, we've got people that can help you out with that nationwide on that. So that's kind of how we go about doing things. So yeah, but you got to get the MLS stuff. And yeah, Matt, agrees. Matt's been watching us on Grant Teach Me Something since the beginning, right? Like Propelio is amazing. And again, their user, I had MLS access that I just let expire because their user experience is just so much better on Propelio, especially trying to go back and forth between rental and retail comps. But yeah, Zillow can give you a rough idea. Another place you can get a rough idea for like the rental side is Rentometer or Rentometer, is something that we'll use, rentometer.com, to get a rough idea of what you might be able to use on the rental side. But at the end of the day, and rentals, I'm more willing to use like a Rentometer because not everybody lists rentals through MLS, right? So like Rentometer, Rentometer, whatever it is, like I'm more willing to use that as a definitive pricing, but I always want to supplement it with actual real estate or actual MLS comps as well, because that is important to get those real numbers. So hopefully you guys learned something today. This is kind of video that's worth rewatching. It's a complicated kind of concept, but again, if you are a member, go check out the video for backing into the deal and knowns and unknowns. They'll help explain each other. Rewatch this video and download the Whetstone. The Whetstone will help you because it gives you all of the blanks to fill in as well as formulas and that kind of stuff to practice. Hopefully that helped for you guys. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to share the video and invite other people in, so that we can create a community of people who are really doing this. That's the beauty of it. I see a question come in from Teresa. I have a lead who has 2 houses. He wants me to send a contract for. They're owned in his Inc. Is that different? So this is a great opportunity to examine what I said earlier of people have trouble looking at deals as money in and money out. You've got to convince yourself to look at deals as money in and money out. Why would that be any different, right? How does that affect what it rents for? That the guy you're buying it from is incorporated, right? Like, how does that affect anything about the money? But this is so common that we're just flooded with information. It gets really hard to line up all of the information that we have. We get so flooded with details and we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what matters and doesn't matter. And so what I'm trying to say is what matters is the money that comes in and the money that leaves. That's the only thing that matters. The only details surrounding that, like a backing into the deal or whatever that might be, are only to support trying to figure out what money is coming in and what money is leaving, right? So there would be no reason for it, being different, because it being owned by an incorporation is not changing what it sells for. It's not changing what it rents for. It's not changing what the underlying lien might be. It's not changing what they might be owed, right? So that would be the answer directly to the question, is that different? No, it's not different. The further answer is, when trying to wonder if something is different, run it through the scope of, does this change the money in or money out? Why would it change? And if you can't think of a reason, then it's probably not going to, right? But things that might change, like a money in, would be like its state of repair. Maybe you're not looking at the ARV, you're looking at an as-is comp. Maybe you're not looking at the fully fixed up rental comps, you're looking at more of as-is rental comps, right? Like that might be something that changes the money in, but that's a direct correlation to something that would change what somebody's going to pay for that. And again, the only thing that matters is looking at money in versus money out. So I'll be a broken record on that, and I have been for the past probably, 6 months or a year or something like that, as I kind of had the realization of like, oh, people just aren't looking at it as what enters my bank account and what leaves my bank account. And it's really hard for people to get into that attitude, but you have to look at it that way. It's the only way that you're going to figure out how to make money on deals. So good question. All right. All right. So yes, thank you guys for being here. Again, don't forget, check out the freebie, share the video. Check out Propelio. They've done a lot for us over the years and set this whole thing up in the first place for Grant Teach Me Something. And it's a great product that you're going to really need for the success of your company. And then if you want to work with us more, go to the Mastermind or whatever that might be. If you like the methodology that we have in teaching and the details that we take and the creativity that's behind it, check out CreativeCashFlow.com. CreativeCashFlow.com/memberships. You can get a time on my schedule. We'll talk about if it's a good fit and then get you in and get you moving and get you learning, right? So love to have you guys in there, and I will see you next week. Take it easy.